Hey there, hi there, ho there. I just watched something that was so painful it hurt my soul. And it ties directly to our topic tonight. Hey, how about them apples? Look at that. How's it going? What's up? Who's doing what? Where are we at? What's going on? Hi, Jason. Who else is here? Who else is in the chat? It says 11 people are watching across 3 streams. We're simulcasting.
Nice.
Also, hey, Mike, and hi to Ruby as well. Real fast, if you guys are going to do super chats tonight to try and get us to the $100 so we can give away 2 Drive-Thru RPG $25 gift cards, don't do them on Cody or Sean's channel. Come to mine and do them. Otherwise, it's complicated. I think you can do them on Cody because you're not monetized yet, right?
No.
Right. So just if you want to keep pitching, and we really do appreciate it, and the idea is to give away these things, come on over to my channel and do the super chat. Otherwise, if you like Sean, give him money, man. Lord knows he could use it. He's in Toronto, a bag of peanuts will cost you, get a mortgage, so that's good. Hello to Jason, Mike, Chris, Elfbait, Robert, Kabuki Kid, Catherine, Jason again, Full Metal Dragon, and there we go. So that's everybody that's here so far from what I can see. A couple of bits of business to take care of before we start. We passed 1,600 subscribers today, so why? How's wrong with you people? Have I not been odious enough? Like, do I have to be meaner now to get you all to go away? I mean, I want to be demonetized. That's my goal now, is to see the numbers go down as hard as I can get them down. I mean, come on. Give them all to Cody. Everybody unsubscribe from me and go subscribe to Cody. He deserves it, not me.
There's no limitation on subscriptions. You can subscribe to everyone without unsubscribing to somebody else.
Hey, Baron G-Rock, what's up, man? Do you want to join us tonight? Because we were on a podcast the other day together, BG, and I enjoyed talking with you. So if you wanted to join us tonight, let me know. And Eli, you know where the link is in the Discord if you want to come join us. I know you won't, but, if you wanted to, you're more than welcome to. And anybody else who wants to join us tonight, if you think you got skin in this game talking about GM styles and you got a camera, a microphone, and, a modicum of a personality, let me know. I'll happily let people in. Sorry. What are you sorry for, man? What are you sorry for, Metal? What's wrong, buddy? What happened? Do you need a hug? What'd you do? Did you step in it? What happened? Maybe I catch something that I missed? Good evening, everyone, is the last thing I saw him say. And then, sorry. Oh, are you apologizing for me reaching 1,600 subscribers? I agree. We should hold a candlelight vigil about it. What did all one say? Wait, do you guys not just? I don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't me. That was someone else. I don't know who that was. All right, guys. At least we'll finally have someone who disagrees with me more than Sean. It'll be Eli, and that'll work out well. We'll get some vibrant chat.
There we go.
So the chat. Nice to see you, by the way, Eli. It's good to have you on again. The chat topic for tonight is going to be. Hang on a second. I got to give Baron G the link so he can come join us. And I can't send. I don't know where you are, so I'm just going to send it there. And if anybody abuses it, so be it. The chat topic tonight is GM styles, and we're going to discuss them all. We're going to discuss, sandbox, railroad, story, hex crawl, whatever we need to discuss. We're also going to talk about GNPCs, if possible, what role the GM truly fits in the game from your point of view. But we are all going to start with the caveat at the start, which is this. Whatever style you run, however you run your games, if players keep coming back, then you're doing what's right for that group. They're having fun, you're having fun, and don't let anyone tell you you're wrong. Much like
clothing. There's no invalid style of play.
Sorry, what was that, Sean?
There's no invalid style of play.
No, there's only the style that works best for you and yours. And we all have preferences and we all have things we like. But ultimately, some people want to tell us we're wrong because, they think they are the grand poobah, to quote Sean from earlier before we got online, of how things should be done. And I will tell you right now, they are wrong. Anyone who tells you your group is doing it wrong needs to STF you, but that's just me. So let's start by going around and describing what we would say is our GMing style. I'll go really fast and really first, since everybody pretty much has been here long enough, knows what my style is or watches my live plays. I like to use a little bit of a mix of, hey, Baron G. I like to use a little bit of a mix of, All Ones wants to join us. Oh my goodness.
That link.
I don't know what to make of this. And All Ones is going to be here. Ooh. Anyway,
Yeah.
my style is a mix
Hello,
of
sir.
sandboxing and narrating. Basically, I have some ideas of the plot and the story I want to do, but I'm going to let the players run around like chickens with their heads cut off until the story needs to come in and poke them in the right directions to get them moving when they dawdle too much in town. That's my style. Cody.
I don't know. I think I've just taken bits and pieces here and there from just doing it so long and whatever. I haven't really like stepped back and been like, oh, this is my style or whatever. But I'd say it's probably a mix of, narrative story style with a lot of sandbox play, because that's what I enjoy as a player. So I try to bring to my players what they enjoy. So I'd probably say that it's very similar to what you do, except we do GM differently just because we're different people, but we probably have a similar style.
Okay.
But I'd say I'd lean more probably towards the sandbox than you do.
Yeah. I don't lean heavily into sandbox, but I touch on it. I
Yeah.
walk around the sandbox. I look at the merry-go-round and see if maybe that's something I want to play on. I don't know. Mr. Sean.
I'm a mash it all together and put it on the table and see what it looks like kind of guy.
Okay.
I like my players playing within a framework. I set the world, I set the stage. I have things going on in the world, but I don't run them down a specific course. They choose where they go and how they do it. I simply adjudicate what happens to the results.
Okay.
So largely sandbox within a framework.
Okay.
But, and again, the sandbox needs borders. Right?
What's that line from Buffy? Rules, borders, and an end zone. I always thought that was a fairly decent description of how things should work. Eli, how would you describe your style?
Pretty freeform. I do a mix of some pretty heavy front loading on world building for the most part, and then kind of just go with the flow from that. Establish that foundation, and that makes the improvisation and just, flexing a lot easier because I don't have to make those decisions on the fly. I already have them in my head. So
that works. Baron G.
It all depends. It depends on what I'm running and system I'm running. If I'm running a system I don't know as well, which does happen sometimes, I may run a module which is very rigid and this is the path we're going. If I'm running something that just kind of like I plucked this out of my brain, okay, let's see what happens. Or I've also had it to where when I was running a module, the module was completely stupid. And I said, okay, we're going to switch tracks here. And then let's play. You have to have that type of flexibility. If you are going down a path and you can't keep going down the path, because if it's not working, change it. If it's working, don't change it. That's pretty much my philosophy on it.
Okay, fair enough. All Ones, and also welcome aboard.
Thank you. I actually thought that invite was for me, so sorry if I misunderstood that.
It's all good, brother. You're here. I let you in. If I didn't want you in,
So
kept
I'm not
you out
sure
the
if
door.
I sound a little weird right now, but
You sound fine.
My GM style is a little bit more chaotic. I'm a very shoot from the hip kind of GM. I very much believe in, as a GM, I'm interpreting dice rolls, so I roll openly and just let the dice kind of do as they may. And if you wind up killing a few characters, it happens. If they wind up getting a super rich first session, it happens. You have to roll with the dice.
Fair enough. So I think we can all agree that we would be, as a collective, flexible in our GMing styles. Perhaps even a little bit reactionary. I know for me, one of the things I get great mileage out of is letting the players provide me inspiration during the game. It's kind of how I get to feel like I'm playing a little bit is by waiting for them to do something that presents an idea that go, oh, let's capitalize. I know we were going to the fireworks factory, but let's take that stop at the Taco Bell and see what happens, since that's where you really want to be right now. And as a result, things can be fun. I use the Neil Gaiman once described writing as going on vacation where you have a list of the locations you want to visit, but how you're going to get to them is going to be up to which way the wind blows you when you hit the road. And I think that's a really fun way to GM. Now, let's start with the most popular, over-the-toply, beautiful, everyone loves is style of a campaign that I never can stop hearing enough about, sandbox. What does that mean to you, Cody?
Well, I always say I run a sandbox campaign, and actually I agree with Baron. What he was saying about his GM style, it really depends on the kind of game that I'm running. I know that I'm going off kind of point here, but that is a really important point, that whatever kind of game I'm running is probably going to change my style a little bit. Like me running a superheroes game is going to be very different from me running a D&D campaign. But as far as like sandbox, I don't run a pure sandbox game per se. It still has story elements and it has plots, but there's all those plots are open. There's a lot of options, and you don't even have to take those options if you don't want them. You know, there's an old joke in my group of, fuck that, let's go be pirates. And because we did that one session, we were like, oh, that all sounds boring. We're going to go to the coast and be pirates. And we did. And, so that's an old joke we always have. Fuck that, let's go be pirates.
Sure.
And if you want to go, if you want to fuck off and go be pirates, cool, you can do that. Or here's, about 10 different things you can do. So I'd call my games more open world than like a sandbox, right? I'm not going to say you can't go somewhere and not do something, but there is obviously stuff laid out before you, and there is story there, and there's going to be NPCs, and there's going to be role playing and all those elements in there, right?
Okay. All right. Sean, what does sandbox mean to you?
It's basically the players have the reins. I will adapt to their choices. Regardless of what I've set up in terms of framework, usually, as Cody says, players will they're lazy. They'll do what's obviously at their feet. But sometimes they go off the rails. Sometimes they'll say, hey, as you say, let's go be pirates. So for me, the sandbox DM will adapt to that. It's all right. The campaign is now about them being pirates, and I'll figure it out from there.
That's fair. All right. Eli, what does sandbox mean to you, sir?
For me, honestly, with sandboxing works really well for the way that I tend to run my games anyways, because I have a pretty strong idea of what the world is. My players can kind of go anywhere in it, and I can come up with something pretty easily. I don't tend to run sandboxes on purpose, but when I run a campaign, if my players want to go to that village over there, okay, go to that village over there. Whatever I had planned to happen is still happening.
Sure.
But, they can move freely. But I don't really plan sandboxes.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't. Can you really plan a sandbox? I mean, really?
I hear different opinions on it. I mean, there's lots of people who are like, well, your sandbox, the real true way to do it is you have to have all these adventures ready and placed all over the place. I'm like, well, yeah, you can do that, but more so in just like, there's a haunted tower over there. Haunted tower could be a place to go. We're not going to worry about what's actually there until you decide you're going to go there, unless it's important to the world. Like if the haunted tower is where the shit's going to start happening, well, fine, we'll detail it out. But I'm going to hope that I can steer you that way. And if I can't, well, it's your fault that the world is consumed by a vampire plague.
So living world.
Yes, living world. Yeah, definitely.
Your haunted tower reminds me of that line from Gamer's Darkness Rising. My, those mountains look quest-worthy. It's just perfectly sums it up.
Exactly.
All right, Baron G, what is a sandbox to you, sir?
Well, I'm going to do a play on a another game instead of a world, world by numbers. It's a game world with by borders. So yes, they can go anywhere within that game world, but typically, if I'm running a type of sandbox, there are a timeline of things that are going to go off. That if things aren't put off, certain things are going to happen. Orcs are going to invade a town. A evil necromancer is going to go in and possibly take over a capital. Things along those lines. There's a timeline type thing, and this is not only to give the players more options on things to do, but also to help them with what they can do. Because sometimes the players will get into an open world and be like, we just want to fish. You just want to what? Yeah, I just want a boat. I just want to go out. I want to fish. I want to come back. I want to sell my fish. And then tomorrow I want to do the same thing. Well, no, stop that. It gives them more of a incentive to buy in. And that's the biggest thing. They have to have that incentive to buy in. If werewolves are, they can go do their little fishing. About the third day, all of a sudden, their boat gets attacked by a huge shark. Well, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to go anymore because there's a big hole in your boat. You just happen to make it back. Now, what are you going to do?
Hello, it's a nice little boat and fishing rod you got there. We represent the Dock Fishermen's Guild, and we'd like to see your papers.
I don't know what I've read on
pretty wicker basket. Shame if something happened to it, eh?
I don't know what I've read on the internet says that's a railroad. Then,
so there you go. You railroad.
Totally
away player agency. That's it, Baron G. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that.
It's only player agency is if you use an explosive, and if that doesn't work, plan B is you use twice as much explosive. That's the railroad.
I think a lot of people forget that the GM is also a player at the table that needs to have fun, and in that your open sandbox needs player agency, but it also needs GM agency to help you have an open sandbox, but they're there to kind of give a guideline and kind of show you different paths, not just everything is a path. And so you can get a good structure to a storyline in a sandbox without it being a railroad too.
I agree. So is that what a sandbox means to you? Sharing the agency of the players?
Yes, I think sharing agency of the game as a GM with your players, but also it's a two-way road. Like in my Traveler campaign, which Traveler is a great open sandbox because you have a ship and you can really go anywhere. There's thousands and thousands of worlds in there. So I usually work with my players like, what is your goal? Your character is going to be doing? Where are they going to be going? And I usually do like a episodic session with a long-term overall like saga of a story. I'm running. I don't think my players can see this, so I'm actually running Secret of the Agents. But between each of the major like checkpoints of the storyline, I'm running something that's very like old school Star Trek episodic. So they're doing like little adventures between the big adventures. And they're having a lot of fun doing that. It's a lot of agency between what they want to do and what I want to do.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. All right. Well, that brings me to my next point. Something Cody touched on when we asked him what a sandbox was to him, and he brought it up, which is that I feel, and by the way, again, thank you, Hunger. I really appreciate the membership. I feel personally some genres or styles will lend themselves to your sandbox concepts, and some are gonna be a little silly to try and sandbox. Case in point, Star Trek. We're the crew of the USS Wanderlust, and we just go where we want. Let's go check out that planet. Sure, sounds like a good time. It's not really gonna work. It's not buying into the genre or the concept of playing Star Trek in the first place. And I will say, for me, the other place where sandbox works for 5 minutes and then the game should start is superheroes. You can patrol around town for a little bit at the start of the session looking for trouble, but eventually the plot has to come in somewhere and the villains have to show up and you have to go, rescue the thing or defeat the thing or get the the widget, the MacGuffin, or whatever case may be. So what would you say are, and we'll go around and see what everybody thinks, the best genres for sandbox, the worst genres for sandbox? Cody.
Best genres or best games? So best genre, I mean, because like not every fantasy type game is, even though most of them are work really well for a sandbox, I think.
Sure.
But D&D especially, I think, lends itself well to sandbox play. Science fiction does too, as all one said. Even though I don't play a lot of science fiction nowadays, I would like to. I just haven't in a while. That definitely lends itself well to a sandbox game. And also, specific game I was thinking of was Vampire the Masquerade. That game kind of naturally kind of plays like a sandbox. It's really all about player agency. The players are really the ones that, to me, in a good vampire game, they're the ones that are driving the game.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it doesn't have to be that way. Of course, you can run that game in various different styles.
Kind of from player agencies and the choices they're making in their city versus choices they're making and where they're going. Kind of like I guess what you're saying on that.
But if you're running vampire as written, they're junior members of their clan. They're going to be 12th, 11th, maybe 10th gen vampires, right?
Yeah.
So it means the whip is going to have authority over them. The clan head of clan's going to have authority. The seneschal and even the sheriff. You're going to be dealing with a lot of people having irons in the fire. And as your players start sandboxing around and causing trouble and using their influence to do what they're going to do, they may start stepping on the feet of other clans, more powerful beings, what have you. And that's going to stop being a sandbox all of a sudden and start to become a plot-driven story. No.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But if you're playing at a big vampire LARP, for example,
LARP is different.
Okay.
Yeah, LARP is 100% sandbox because it's 83 people standing around.
But I've also played at the tabletop where we're basically playing a LARP, and it's essentially the same kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
I mean, like when I run Vampire at the tabletop, it pretty much plays out like a LARP. I let the players do what they want. Yes, you're right. When you're playing a low generation vampire, you're going to be told to do things and where to go and what to do. But also there's a lot of behind the scenes things going on. There's a lot of note passing, quote unquote, going on. There's a lot of, nowadays we're texting, or there's a lot of, hey, can we go outside and smoke a cigarette? Sure.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, I guess it's not so much maybe a sandbox, just I feel like it has a lot more player agency involved. If the players are more involved in driving the story, it makes that game better. And when they're not, it makes the game worse, in my opinion.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right, Sean, how about you? What do you think is a good game for sandboxing, and this is a bad idea to sandbox in this type of a game?
Well, the obvious choice would be anything exploration based. Obviously my go-tos are D&D for that, but anything with that kind of metric, where the players are literally exploring the frontier and the new world and unexplored territories, you're going to sandbox it. As for I tend to agree with you on the Star Trek front, because unless you're the captain of the ship and you're saying, hey, we should go check out this unknown planet, it's still there's not going to be a lot of sandboxing. But other space games could work sandbox style, where you're a rogue ship or you're an independent ship, then you can just fly around. Even Spelljammer, going back to D&D, you just pick a target, pick a place and go. The only difference is you're in a ship instead of just stuck to one world.
Well, I mean, that was sort of what the point of Traveler was back in the day, right? Was you got your free trader, you're in the Spinward Marches, good luck. All right, bounce around and find story.
Very much so. Traveler lends itself very well to a open sandbox because it's a open-ended kind of like objective.
Now, going back to Star Trek, I don't know how the Star Trek games work, but I mean, certainly there must be an option to be civilians, or are you always Starfleet?
Yep. FOSSA had the trader
captains and merchant princes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a group on a civilian ship could easily be a sandbox game in the Star Trek universe.
It could be, but I mean, the thing is ultimately, I agree, but I think ultimately in something like a Star Trek specifically, or even a Star Wars to a certain extent, there is a meta plot to the universe that's going to exist, and I think that's what people are buying in for, right?
Well, I would want to
Yeah.
play if I was playing Star Trek. I would want to play Starfleet.
Yeah.
Right. I'd want to be in Starfleet, and I get it. Okay, so you're going to be giving us the missions, so less inclined to go sandbox there. But something like Star Wars. Star Wars is it's a fantasy world anyway. So you've got your
Yeah.
ship. Have ship will fly, so you can go
Sure.
anywhere and have adventures on any kind of planet and terrain. So that can easily be a sandbox adventure game. You don't have to follow the plot of Star Wars.
So
No,
just
you don't have to follow the plot. But I mean, if I'm playing Star Wars, I want to fight stormtroopers at some point. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of the buy-in at that point. I mean, I do want to fucking blow up some guys in white helmets, And once you do that, once you draw the attention of the Empire to yourself, well, your sandbox may just now turn into where can we run to this week to hide from the Empire that's hunting us down.
But you're still in control of your character's fate.
Yeah, you can still sandbox it then, because that's how most of my Star Wars games I've ever run have ended up.
Just wait for them to trip over the Empire.
No, I mean half the time my players avoid the Empire and just basically firefly their way around the Star Wars universe. So
Interesting. All right, that's interesting.
And when you're playing a game with a built-in setting, you're playing the setting more than the actual system or the concept of the game. That's what brings you to the table. If you're playing a specific setting like Star Wars.
Yeah, but you could say the same if you're playing the Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or Dragonlance. I mean,
Definitely.
there's going to be certain caveats that are going to be a part of that because of the overall overarching meta plot, right? I mean, that's going to be something you have to deal with. Okay, so what's Eli? We'll go around again. Let's try and avoid talking over each other if we can, guys, because there's 6 of us. No, it's okay. We're going to try our best not to do that, so we all can be heard and have our agency. Eli, what would you say is a great game? Let's take D&D off the table. We all agree D&D can do really great sandbox. What is a great game for sandboxing, and what is that? Oh God, no, this is a bad idea for sandboxing.
So it's hard to say one without it being a spaceships science fiction game, because those generally, I mean, the archetype that everybody has in fiction is for science fiction is generally, I would say Gamma World is a great one for sandbox.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Really perfect for sandbox. You have an enclave where everybody lives, and it's also great for open table sandboxing because whatever little band wants to wander into the wasteland around your enclave, that's where you're going, and it's so open to what can you find where, as opposed to even like a D&D, which is there's a village over there and the dwarves live in those mountains. I mean, a lot of times in Gamma World, for example, you don't know what is out there beyond a couple of days of your enclave. You may know that there's a bunch of old rusty skyscrapers over there and nobody comes back from that place. But that's about it.
And Bartertown is that way. Good luck. Pick your direction. Yeah.
Definitely lots of room in Gamma World for a "Here There Be Dragons" kind of, kind of a map thing. There's a death machine over there, and none of the players know it, but nobody comes back alive.
But by default, by the way, that would mean also. Sorry to jump in on that one, but by default, that would also mean Fallout would be a great sandbox setting.
Fallout actually has more of a definite world setup to it with the lore. The world is much more defined because there have been video games that have defined it. So again, you're going to run into that Star Trek, Star Wars thing where people coming in to play Fallout are they're going to have an expectation. You don't have to play with those expectations, but I feel like there's more baggage. Gamma World, being TSR's big, mostly ignored, never successful, sci fantasy game, has a lot written for it, but none of it overly definite and defined.
All right.
As far as a bad one example, it's an indie game that I like that I've got from a long time ago that you absolutely cannot play sandbox, and that is Justifiers. Because in Justifiers, every mission only happens if there's an organization that sets it up.
Okay.
They have a very, very limited form of space travel in Justifiers. There is a gate system where the gate can only stay open so long, and it only can handle a finite outside diameter. So they pack you and your crew in a two deck shuttle, and that is just as long as the gate will stay open and just as wide and tall as the gate can be, with all your supplies, point you at a planet that they've surveyed, and chuck you blindly without the ability to return. And you and your crew have to go down and survey and justify the world for the corporation that sent you. And then like 2 weeks after you get there, your return gate will activate. You have to build it and set it up on the planet and everything. And your shuttle only has enough fuel to land. You can't even get up and fly around in it. So that game absolutely doesn't work.
No, that would be a bad sandbox game. Yeah,
It's like sandboxing could happen on one world on that game, but
sure.
in fact, it really affects how warfare happens in there because everything has to come through a gate.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Baron G. Rock, what's a good sandbox? What's a bad sandbox?
So since we're kind of defining it down more toward game-wise, I would say something that would be a good one, and this is kind of an oldie but a goodie, Morrow Project. Morrow Project, because the way I've played it is that we have always started like within a radius of where we live. And then, you have a map, you have predefined, you do have predefined, well, this is a military installation, here's a military installation, and kind of going to those spots to get supplies, etc., make contacts. Yes, it has a kind of a roadmap, but we don't have to go from where I'm at, because I'm in Illinois. I mean, you don't always have to go down to Scott Air Force Base down outside of, you can always go up to the Quad Cities, up there in around Iowa, and to the Armory up there. There's the old, there's a bunch of older Air Force bases and arsenals that are just everywhere. And it lends itself more to it. Now, something that I would say would not be, and actually I have two. One is one that was done on a book series called Monster Hunter International. Because typically you're going after the quote unquote monster of the week to collect the puff bounty. And that's what it is. There's an attack, you go. It's not really a sandboxing type thing. Another one I would say, which does not really lend itself to a good sandbox, is going to be and I'm going to disagree with Cody here about the whole vampire thing. Is vampire or werewolf, things along those lines, because you're not, with like the werewolf or the vampire, you're not the head of the clan, you're not the head of the organization. With the werewolf, you're not you're not the alpha, you are, you're a follower at that point. You do what the bosses tell you to do, you go where the bosses tell you to go, you do the job, come back out. Now, is there a little wiggle room in that? Yes. Is it railroading? Because you do have a little bit of a idea of how you can go from point A to point B, and you can zigzag to get there. But a lot of times when you're in that type of organization, or any type of military type organization where they're not playing the leading force, the generals, etc., you're going to have that type of game setup where you've got a point A to point B. Yeah, and like I said, you can do little zigzag and everything else, but eventually you're going to get from point A to point B. Okay. And that's just because that's how those games are set up.
So the hierarchical setup can be anathema to a sandbox, basically. If you're okay, that makes sense.
Correct.
All ones, your turn.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what the goals of the players and the game you're playing is. Like sci-fi games are pretty good, but if you're, as Baron G-Rock said, if you're getting orders from a higher up, go here, don't go off path, it's not really a sandbox anymore. But if you're playing something like Pirate Board, where you're the crew, you can still have a captain, but you can be a very open-ended of where you guys go as a crew, because you guys the had a very democratic system with pirates of voting to where to go and where to get what to do. So really, the captain's only giving orders in battle. So in Pirate Board, you can find all these different islands. So you could even run like what would I say would be is a very not normally a sandbox game, Shadowrun. You could be a group of smugglers running around the city, going into different areas and different neighborhoods, and running across different organizations that way, and working for different people. And you still have that a little bit of authoritarian, or not authoritarian, but somebody above you, hierarchy, kind of guiding you, but you're still kind of a freelance agent traveling around. And the thing is, you really want more exploration and choices in the players of where to go and how they go about it. And I think it's more of what a sandbox is than just traditional, like you have an open setting, go where you want. Is kind of what you need there. And it doesn't matter what that setting is. It doesn't have to be a traditional map. It could be a town, city. Hell, you could even, as GM Cody said, it could actually be just the political process of the vampires in your city and trying to understand how that works and exploring that.
Okay.
A few extra words in your mouth there, Cody, but
Hey, look at that, Cody. People putting words in your mouth.
Hey, all good.
Say thank you. Okay, so all right, so we I think we all understand what a sandbox is. We understand the strengths of it. We understand the limits of it. Let's talk about the 800-pound evil in the room, the railroad. Now, I have noticed, as we saw earlier when someone made the joke at Baron G's expense of, you're railroading, sorry, it seems to be a bit of a moving goalpost on what is considered railroading, what isn't considered railroading. See, back in my day, we called it stonewalling, right? Which was whenever we'd try and do something and the DM would throw a block in our way. We're like, you're just stonewalling us, man. What the hell? Like, let us do what we want to do. So what does railroad mean to you? And we'll start in reverse this time. All ones. What does railroad mean to you?
well, I think it's taking away player agency. Last Space 1889 game I ran, I just wound up doing a lot of combat where my players wanted to do a lot more exploration. I accidentally wound up doing a railroad on them, but it was kind of fun combat. But it ended poorly, and taking away that ability to go around like, hey, you as a GM had planned combat, but you didn't really give them an option or worked with them on the option of how to avoid it. It's putting the players on one set path without any ability to have them, or basically it's just wow, I cannot talk, I'm not good at live. I think this might be my last live stream I might ever be a part of, but it's about you're at that point, it's only the GM agency, not the player's agency, and that's where the railroad comes in. Is it's only what the GM had in mind, and they're not working with the rest of the group on how to get around certain problems. So if you only put combat there and you only set combat, that's it. You're not giving them a way to outthink or sneak around or do other kinds of ways of thinking outside the box.
All right. G-Rock, what's a railroad to you?
Oh, railroad to me, I have the perfect module, and it's one of the first Pathfinder modules that came out, Second Darkness. The last module of that is literally a rinse and repeat. You go in, you fight these exact same type of guys, you break this crystal, you go on to the next section, you fight these exact same guys, you break this crystal in a room, you go on to the next room, and it's rinse and repeat over that. To me, that is the entire, wrapping up in one thing of a railroad, is where you are doing exactly the same thing over and over. You're on the rails. You're not able to get off the rails. As much as you try to tip the minecart over, going down the whole Indiana Jones, pathway and trying to get away from the bad guys. The bad guys are chasing you. You can't switch the gears. You're on this set gear. There's no change in it. There's no wiggle room. It's just fire up the steam locomotive and let's roll. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
All right, so basically the movie Groundhog Day is a railroad, in your opinion.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Not
but
great
he
character
broke the
role.
mold. He broke the mold.
Yes, he did. He found a way to break it. That's how it works. There was a method to the madness. Cool. Eli, what is a railroad in your estimation?
So for me, I think honestly, almost no scenario or adventure is necessarily a railroad. I think there are railroady GMs. And because the essence of a railroad for me comes down to GM response. It's player agency gets thrown around a lot, but it's less about giving the players what they want, but also it's more about listening and working with their choices. To use the one that G-Rock was talking about, if my players were in that adventure and the adventure has room for them to come out of that linear progression. But let me get to this too. A railroad and a linear adventure are not the same thing. There are many adventures like the one you mentioned that are designed specifically to be a linear adventure because that is how you have to solve it. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing all the time because face it, there are some situations where there's really only one solution. Your players can talk about other options. I think where it stops being a railroad is when you entertain those choices by your players and you play them out to their ultimate conclusion. So even in that linear progression and that linear adventure, okay, you guys want to try that? Cool. We're going to go try it. Where it becomes a railroad is where the DM's like, no, you can't try that. You have to do it this way.
Yeah. There is no fireworks factory. You're never getting to it. Life's hard. Get a helmet.
Even if you're locked in a temple and you only have these 5 rooms to go to, how you get through them, how you how much time the players want to spend role playing, how many other alternate plans they want to try, that's all up to them. Even if ultimately they still have to go into the next room and destroy the crystal, and
Yeah. Okay. All right. John, what's a railroad, buddy?
Basically, when you're on the rails. No. Yeah, I know. It's so funny.
No,
No,
the Orient Express. No.
you take. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, technically, if you're doing that Cthulhu adventure on the Orient Express,
You're literally on a railroad. No,
Although in that one you get off the train a lot.
You've taken away the player's agency. Basically, the DM has laid out their beats. They've written their story, and you're gonna see it through, come hell or high water, as you say, stonewalling. I've met DMs. What was it? What's that term? The quantum ogre, right? They've got the encounter all planned out, and wherever you go, you're going to encounter that ogre. That's railroading. That's the choices don't matter. You might as well just sit back and let the DM narrate what he's going to narrate, roll some dice when he calls for it.
Yeah.
If your choices matter, even on a linear story, then you're good. But when the story is what it's going to be, regardless of what you do, then you're railroaded.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
Yeah, the
Cody.
quantum ogre is particularly insidious. In real quick interjection, because it's the railroad that pretends to be flexible DMing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The quantum dungeon, the quantum ogre.
The quantum fireworks factory. Any way you slice it, you're going to that fucking fireworks factory. Yeah.
Why is it in the middle of the swamp now?
Well, that's where it is because the land was cheap and they built it there. Shut up. Boom. Fireworks.
The goblins make it.
Yeah, the fucking kobolds. Cody.
Yeah, I mean, everybody pretty much defined a railroad. I would pretty much define it like this as somebody that didn't understand. Railroad is Mario Brothers, and at the extreme end, and the extreme end of the sandbox to video game terms would be like the Elder Scrolls games, right?
Yeah, okay.
To me. Okay.
Could you give me another Nintendo game instead, like Link Ocarina of Time or something?
No, because That's not quite a railroad
I know.
because you can make decisions. But we'll say Ninja Gaiden. How about
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that more to your preference?
Fair enough.
All right.
You
So
win this round, 8-bit man.
Yeah. So, but everybody throws. I mean, really, what everybody thinks of a railroad is really just being a bad GM, in my opinion. You know, because you can have, like we said, you can have a linear story. I do linear plots all the time. My players love those kind of games. They love, being led through a plot. They love that. They want to see what's next. They want to go do that thing, but where it's going to differ from a railroad, like Eli and everybody else was talking about, is I'm going to give, they're going to make options that I didn't think of, hopefully, and I'm going to have to play off that, and it might change my plot a little bit, and I'm going to wing it, right? I'm going to improvise with what their decisions are, and that's being a good game master, in my opinion.
Do you roll up your newspaper and swat the bad game master on the nose and go, bad GM, bad?
Well, also, that's also I haven't seen somebody do that in a long time, and usually if I see somebody do that, it's because they're new to being a game master, and usually I'm going to be pretty I'm going to go along with it just because they're new to the sensation of being a game master. They don't quite understand how to improvise yet. So, and every once in a while, I'm going to throw them a little left curve. I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to do it this way and see how they react, because that's going to sharpen their skills. But, usually I see that in somebody that's new to being a game master or dungeon master. I rarely see that anymore in somebody that's like an experienced game master. But then again, I rarely get to play. So, usually I am the game master. So, and I try not to, lead people by the nose all the time, even though I will say my players kind of like to be led by the nose a little bit, so I react. I'll change my style based on what the players are presenting me. So if they're making a lot of choices and are really demanding a lot of agency, they're like, oh, we're going to go do this, we're going to do that, I'm going to take my gold and invest it in this keep, and we're going to hire all these henchmen, and we're going to do this, and we're going to talk to this king. I'm going to go along with everything they're saying. I'm like, okay, this is the way this game's going to go. If I'm like, what do you guys want to do? And everybody's just staring at me. And then I'm going to be like, okay, well, somebody walks in the end, this wizard walks in the end, he's a young guy, I'm going to try to give them something to do, because obviously they're not very good at just improvising on the fly, or they want me to come up with more things to do. They want to be led by the nose a little bit. And to be honest, most of my players do most of the time. So
yeah, no, I agree with you on that. All right, so here's a question from the ZNet Gallery. Insert name here says, here's a question. Would the Mists of Ravenloft enveloping a group be considered railroading? What is railroading has become so broad now? Anybody got a thought on this one? Yeah, go ahead, Eli.
No. Wow, no. I mean, seriously, the Mists of Ravenloft enveloping the party is not a railroad, because it is something they may not have a choice to deal with, to escape. But if your players are, say, aware that the mists are enveloping them, yes, you can try to run away. Yes, you can try to cast magic against the darkness. You can try to, turn the evil mists. You can take your actions. An inevitable event is not railroading if it serves the plot or the story. The swallowing up, I guarantee you, the getting swallowed by the mists of Ravenloft isn't the end. That's the beginning, and that sets up the how do you deal with this now? You're in freaking Ravenloft. What do you do from here? And then how do you survive, escape? But having somebody swallowed. I mean, it's no worse than the ship that you're sailing on your way to the kingdom of Karamaiku sinks, and you find yourself, on the shores of some sandy desert island. Cue adventure begin.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. I agree with that. I do think, though, there is a certain type of player that would accuse it of being railroady because of its inevitability and the fact that it's the catalyst that starts the adventure. And certainly from what I see from some people online, it would definitely, I can see people going, this is railroady bullshit. And it's like, okay, no, you're just an anarchist. Therefore, anything that doesn't allow you to choose what you do and has you affect everything, you're going to consider a railroady situation. I've had players like that. Not many, thankfully, but I've had a few. And ultimately, I think that's just a personal thing versus a refereeing style. That would be my answer on it.
And I'm sure they're against killing characters in games too. So yeah.
What are you going to do? People are different. Okay, so we can all agree then that railroading is a very specific thing, despite how people want to see it and accuse other things like plot and linear story of being railroad. So long as you're letting your players' choices matter and you're not just throwing the quantum ogre all around on them, you can still tell a linear story and you can still have plot points and you can still all have that good stuff. And I mean, look, there's nothing I like more in a game than, oh, you didn't go to the obvious clue I gave you. And like Eli says, well, the world's still happening. And now that you've gone and chased those unicorns that you were so excited to go chase in the woods for 3 days, and now go back, oh, the village is on fire and everybody's dead or, abducted into slavery. Guess it's a real shame you weren't around to try and put the stop to that orc raiding horde. Okay, everybody, listen, we have to behave. My boss is here. Okay, my boss is here. Everybody behave. My boss is here. Oh, jeez. Hello, Mr. Pimentel. How are you, sir? Is all good with you, sir?
Get in.
I'm doing all right. How's everyone? I don't know how long it can be on, but I wanted to pop on to say hi.
Well, there you go. Well, we've already discussed sandboxes and we just discussed railroading. Is there any thoughts you'd like to have on either of those subjects, Mr. Pimentel?
Not at the moment. If I feel inspired, I will jump in. So
all right. The last style that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll open it up, open forum, and discuss whatever we want about GMing styles, is the hex crawl. Now, for those who don't know what a hex crawl is there is a map. Let's say for shits and giggles, the hexes on the map are all numbered. And you as a group decide which hex you're going to go explore next. And then there may or may not be stuff already laid out in that hex, or there could be a random table your GM's using to roll. The wilderness of the higher wilderlands, or whatever it's called. That's the most famous one I know of for hex crawls. The one that kind of
started it.
Yeah, it was
the West Marches?
Not the West Marches. No.
The Wilderlands of High Adventure Judges Guild.
Judges Guild, that's the one. Yeah,
Wilderlands of High Fantasy. Yeah,
Wilderlands of High Fantasy. That's the one. And then there was, I have one that I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. So I'm going to be a bad boy, and I'm going to turn my head away from the microphone while I.
Kingmaker is another one that was put out for Pathfinder. That is a ultimate hex crawl.
Another two good ones is Twilight 2000 and I mentioned it a few times. Traveler. Both use anything by GDW used a lot of hex crawl system.
Well, isn't a hex crawl really just kind of a sandbox with a grid?
Yes and no.
That was my
right?
thought.
Yes and no, but I was corrected and told no, they're not the same thing at all. I was told they're not at all the same thing.
In the Venn diagram of campaigns, all hex crawls are sandboxes, but not all sandboxes are hex crawls.
I guess.
I think those two extra sides actually make a big difference from a square to a hex.
Jesus Christ. Hexagons are the bestagons, okay? And we all know that, and we'll just leave it at that. So, yes, I agree. A hex crawl is sandboxy in nature, but not all sandboxes are hex crawls. What do you think about hex crawls? Have you used one? Have you played one? Does it at all interest you? Is it something that there's a reason why it doesn't interest you, or is there a reason why it really captivates you? Who wants to jump in on that one? Anyone can talk here.
I'm actually having fun designing one right now, which is Twilight 2000. Playing in the Pacific. I'm going to be playing in the Pacific Northwest. Have a lot of fun drawing out the map and kind of figuring out what's here and what's there. And this will be the first real hex crawl I've actually done before. And it's the prep work on it has been a lot of fun to do and just kind of map out the world and try to figure out how my players are going to interact with this. And I'm a little worried that some of the cool stuff I have on there, they're never going to see.
That's
quantum it.
That's the nature of it.
Yeah, I know.
Don't you dare
quantum militia.
The quantum militia, the quantum redneck Sasquatch army.
It's my
Sean, you look like
hometown.
you
You're
wanted to
my
say
home,
something.
my home turf. You're talking about there.
Oh, so sorry. Pardon me, Sam Squanch. Sean,
Sea
you
squash,
look like you were
man.
going to say something about hex.
Yeah,
crawls.
I was about to say hex crawl is just part of the game, right? It's not something I necessarily focus on, but I love it when it happens when players finally get to that point where they can explore the wilderness. It's like, all right, lay down the hex, let's go to it. But
Sure.
I don't necessarily say, okay, it's going to be hex crawls all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a spice for you. You can
Yeah.
throw it in or leave it out.
It's a tool
Okay.
for the game. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And-
Anybody else?
Also, you can use a hex crawl. One of the other folks on our Thursday night show, Table Breakers, Jade, he actually has a randomized table for making a world, and
Right.
the world's made up of hexes. So technically, that could also be called a hex crawl, also because it's got different biomes, it's got different, of course, different cities. And the hex is going to be much larger than what you're looking at your typical square. A hex is going to be 50 to 100 mile area, as opposed to maybe a 10 by 10 or a 5 by 5 area, type of deal.
Okay.
I love using
Yeah.
the random terrain generator in the DMG, and you'll get some fun stuff on there, like, a ruin, for instance. There you go. Boom, dungeon. Just randomly created.
And you can use the random dungeon generator as well, and off you go to
in
the
a
races.
pinch, yeah, absolutely.
Zero prep needed.
In Traveler, I found the hex grid being a very good tool of finding out for prepping, like, where are you going next to my players, and it gives me a good idea of what I'm planning next session, which I kind of suck at planning for my next session. So it's actually been a good tool of keeping me on track.
Yeah. Yeah. Kabuki Kid said something that I like. As always, some DMs are better at handling riffing on what the player decides to investigate than other DMs. Some DMs are just better at dealing with sandboxy games. I'd say that's a truism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say
We all have our skills.
it's a skill, though. Like, being able to bounce off what your players do is a skill, and it's one you learn in time. I think a lot of people, and this is just a personal thing, but I think a lot of people, when they start DMing or GMing, they're more railroady because they don't have the experience under their belt of dealing with players and sort of negotiating or even herding the cats, as it were. But as they go along, they just start to go, you know what? It's way more fun when I let Felonious Fumblefingers try and pick the pocket of the Archbishop while he's doing mass at the town square and see where that takes us. You know what I mean? And have fun with that, and let's see what happens. So I see it sort of going both ways. Len, come on, man. You got to have something to say.
So I find it interesting that while we're all here talking about the hex crawl, we're really not talking about players. We're really only talking about the GM and what the GM does in the GM prep and the utility of the hex crawl for prepping. And we're not really at all discussing for players. And I kind
Have you read the name of the chat tonight there, Len? It's GM styles.
Yes, but presumably when we're talking about the style, we're talking about how
That's it. I quit. I am no
player.
longer a wholly owned subsidiary of Lakeside Games. That's all there is to it, sir.
And whether or not it makes for a good game. So,
Yeah.
so I actually think that hex crawls are a way to prepare for a sandbox, and sandboxes and hex crawls maybe are a really fun thing to do as the GM, because you just sit and create a bunch of stuff and you don't know where it's going to go, and you have all the fun. You don't miss out on anything because you created the stuff, or you created the tables for you to determine the stuff randomly, or you sorted through the tables and picked the ones that you're going to use for your game or whatever. But I'd love to, other than the players have freedom to do what they want. Okay, that's understood. But apart from that, I'd love to hear some more conversation about how this is good and fun for players. Because I'm kind of a tweener. I don't like being railroaded. We were all railroaded, and we all railroaded as kids. But the flip side is, nor do I like, here's a vast open plain, go in any direction you want.
Yeah.
I kind of like a tweener, I'd like an experience that there's some tailoring, but I'd like freedom within that experience. I have yet to have extended fun in a sandbox, long-term sandbox game, and you'll have to excuse me as I bow out and you guys tell me how I'm wrong. I will be back in a little bit.
Okay.
No, we can't
All right,
see
well,
his
now
face
that
when we tell him
Len-
he's wrong.
Well, yeah, exactly. But that's okay. He'll have to rewatch it. I do like the let's talk about the players. No, we're not here to talk about the players tonight. We're here to talk about GMing styles.
No.
We'll do a whole video on players. I promise. We'll do next week. Four Color Cafe, we'll do the other style, player styles, and we'll have fun with that one. But no, but I mean, I agree with what he's saying. Dedicating your game to one style can be a strength, but I think it can also be a weakness in the long run. If it's always a sandbox, it's always a hex crawler, it's always a linear plot-driven thing, right?
See, I don't think I'm sure it's happened, but I've never encountered, say, a sandbox game that is 100% sandbox.
Right.
And I've only ever encountered hex crawls, if we're making them different, as part of basically a mechanism to facilitate a sandbox.
Sure.
Sandbox worlds for me and most of my campaigns have been very open campaigns where the players can go everywhere. And most of them I played in. And his comment about we all railroaded, I didn't when I was a kid, and nor did my players. We were very much like, all right, you want to do that? Cool, go ahead. We just thought it was cool to just fuck around and find out. All right. 80s kids, yay. But
I meant except you. Sorry, I thought that was clear.
You get home from school.
I am
your
not a
parents
happy
are not there.
unicorn, but no,
Roll to activate the microwave.
But no, I mean that idea that it's just one thing or the other. No, because sandboxes, in my experience, turn into more than a sandbox just through the nature of the play.
Yeah.
As you play in the sandbox, they're a great way to get a campaign going. But once you've run into the King's Men in a couple of towns, and you start to catch wind that there's some meta plot going on with how the king is evil, then your players are probably going to want to start looking into dealing with the evil king or that cult of Orcus that seems to be at every town at the gate with their symbols and their alms plates and their
Yeah.
But also people go missing everywhere they go. Then you start getting into adventures, and the GMs that I've played with, and as a GM, I'll start to weave those more specific stories into my sandbox. Wandering around forever, just
it's weird.
Even one of the greatest sandbox adventures ever published, which is X1 Isle of Dread,
there's
still has a plot.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and like you're saying,
to discover the places that are there,
And it's like you're saying, Eli, it's like as you're doing stuff, you're going to attract attention. You can't be adventurers in a world and not attract attention. Out of every 10 characters, I might get one guy whose description is nondescript. I wear basically gray cloak, and the other one's like, I am Senor Gardakan, and I have blooming feathers and a hat and my golden swords. And it's like, yeah, you're going to draw a little attention to yourself there, Senor. That's how that's going to work. And eventually, the church who hates magic users found out you cast a spell, and now we have a problem. It's going to happen.
And to flip it around to kind of something that Len was saying too. Hopefully, your players it'll start to catch your players' attention. Not only will you be catching the attention of the world, but your players will be picking up on, like I said, everywhere we go, these freaking Orcus cultists are here, and people are disappearing in these towns. And oddly enough, the king's not doing anything to get rid of them. What's going on?
Yep,
meta plot.
Exactly. And then you throw in the old rumors, and you throw in the leads, and you throw in that young maiden who's being chased through the street by the guys in the black robes who just happens to round the corner into your players. And now what do they do?
One night while the players are going to the 15th ubiquitous inn in the campaign, suddenly a secret panel slides open in the back of your room, and 4 assassins come in and try to drug you and drag you because they just think that you're the next victim.
Yeah.
First of all, I think that would be totally awesome. And by the way, if anyone hasn't said it yet, Sean, the new puppet looks amazing.
I know. It's the flesh tones and the
Yeah,
glasses.
it's incredible. It looks
Very
so
lifelike.
Very lifelike. Yeah.
I think it's AI
and so-
generated.
But my question is that truly a sandbox then? Once you start layering the meta plot on it, and again, I don't know if you guys hit the definitions of these things and what they are and the fact that they bleed on the edges. I maybe that isn't truly a sandbox anymore. Maybe it started as one, but it evolved into something else. Or maybe, you could, I don't know where those definitions, where those hard
I personally
lines
think those
fall.
definitions are purely academic.
I
For
think
me,
if you
yeah.
convince your
So it
players that it
lands-
was their idea, it's totally a sandbox.
But and
Sorry?
that's just it. So long as the players still have full control, it's like, okay, so you've got this plot happening. You've thrown the hooks at them. You've thrown the details. You get to use Eli's example of 4 assassins burst in. Players still have full control over how they deal with it, or whether or not even they can walk away. Right?
Hell, they could always decide to join the cult and say, "Hey, how can
Exactly.
we get in on the action?
This sounds like a great idea.
Anybody who's followed
I'll
my
sell you
Knights
these
Alone-
5 kobolds I kidnapped."
So does sandbox
legitimately-
then? Does sandbox just mean players completely get to choose? Is that all? Is that all it means then?
It
I
can.
think for the modern
suppose,
age,
but-
yes. I think for the modern age, that's what a sandbox. I think that's what most people think a sandbox is.
Right.
Right.
And if they think it, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the definition they're going by.
I mean,
Um,
if we go by the actual metaphor, what is a sandbox? You go to the sandbox, sit down, you got a bunch of sand sitting there, you start putting stuff together, and out of those things you built in the sand, a story forms.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So hang on. Sean, Eli, all ones, Len, myself, we've been dominating this little talk for a few minutes here. Cody or Baron G, got anything you want to add to this?
Well, the thing is that you can use a sandbox to start moving toward maybe using a module or going into something else, because it's all, you brought up the Temple of Orcus or the Cultus of Orcus, and all of a sudden I'm kicked back to Necromancer Games' Rapanatha. And then you start go down into the Temple of Orcus to kill Orcus himself. And, which is a great module. It has one of the best mimics on the first level I've ever seen. It's a toilet, and it's stuck as a toilet. And you can't kill it. You can't trap it. And it's amazing. So if you get a chance to get a hold of that, just to read that mimic, it's hilarious. Because it only moves 5 feet around. And if you trap it in 1d4 days, it gets out of however it was trapped. It has like all kinds of spell resistances to, everything. Because he decided he was going to be a toilet, and a mage sat on there with a staff of the Magi and ate him. And then the staff broke. So therefore, now he's got all these resistances, all this other stuff, and yeah.
I must interject. Have you ever seen Cheech and Chong's Corsican Brothers?
Yes.
The bit when they're trying to come up with their story as to what happened is what you just did. So the
Yes.
dragon came by and it breathed on it, and there was the fire, and then it killed us. No, it was gonna kill us, but we were putting out the fire, and then the gypsies came. Yeah, and they killed us. No, they tied us up with the golden. That's what you just did.
Yeah, and then they were outside of the vampire. He Cheech starts into his whole spiel there from Dusk Till Dawn. My point being is that you can use a sandbox to move into a more regimented or a more defined adventure if you need to. You can, because it's always a means to an end. So if you are wanting them to follow this adventure that you have planned out, you put them in an open world sandbox. They start hearing all these rumors. They start hearing everywhere they go. They're hearing about this, and then it happens to them. And using what Eli said about the Orcus, the cult of Orcus. Now you've got them set up to go into your actual adventure, and for them to be able to experience the story that you want them to experience.
And
I will
there's
say this,
well,
Eli. Go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say there's the difference for me is I don't have a story for them to experience. I don't have a plan. I seed options, I seed modules, I seed some homebrew stuff. I put it all there for them to interact with, but I don't guide them or push them to any one thing. So it's not like, it's like, okay, I want to play Ravenloft. I'm going to seed Ravenloft. They're going to think they've chosen to go to Ravenloft. No, I will lay it as one of the options. If they go to Barovia, then we're doing Ravenloft. But I don't have the end game laid out. And I think that aids in the sandbox feel in that they are still in control. The options are there. They might even not choose anything I have laid out, and I have to come up with something new, but that's fine. That's fine by me.
Yeah, I just want to run that Cult of Orcus game because I want to play. That sounds awesome.
Well, the funny thing is like what G-Rock is saying is completely true. It's absolutely a way you can set it up. In fact, I mean, really, Isle of Dread does that. Here's an island you can run all over the place on, but wait, there's this thing going on with the Copru, and that's a whole dungeon. That's a thing. My Orcus example was really just, the way I would generally run that would be like I would just seed out that every time you go to the town, there are these Orcus cults, and there may not even be a big meta plot for the Cult of Orcus going on, but at the same time, it gives me an option to develop it. I think that's kind of what Sean is talking about too, where you put these seeds out there and they can become something, but they don't necessarily have to.
I kind of get the impression, though, in Sean's game, if they went and started investigating the Cult of Orcus, they'd be spending a lot of time finding useful information about the Cult of Orcus and being able to make a decision as to whether or not they wanted to join it, but they wouldn't be uncovering some secret plot by the Cult of Orcus. Is that what you're saying, Sean? Or are you saying that if they went that direction, you'd create something for them?
Well, if it wasn't something I already had laid out, then I would create something for it.
Aha, so you do have secret plots in your campaign then if something's already laid out.
He seeds adventures.
I
understand what it is.
Okay, so you leave the nugget and let them grow it. Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, it depends on and it depends on what strings that they pull to where what bits of the story or the adventure that you wish to give to them.
And Baron has set me up for my favorite line ever, which is, "Oh, don't tug on that. You never know what it's connected to."
And I know that Sean does a good amount of emergent stuff too, just things that are born out of random encounters and rolls too.
And keeping on topic with the show is that's a style of play I enjoy. I like seeing what happens. Like that's why I don't like having a plan, because I want to see what's going to happen based on the player's choices, based on how the dice roll. Because I never know. I like being surprised, and that can be a lot of fun.
So you're the chaotic Cylon. Your plan is to not have a plan. Got it.
Chaotic neutral DM.
I think it's very important to keep your players motivated. So when you guys not force them into a story like you guys are saying. So what you're saying keeps your players coming back to the table and motivated to keep adventuring and searching and playing that sandbox and exploring it.
Yeah, I get that. All right, Cody, come on, man. I've been trying to get back to you.
Oh,
for
that's
so
good.
long.
I'm enjoying listening to everybody. Everybody's got some good points.
You're such a nice person. I hate you. I mean, you're my brother.
So what Eli was saying rings very true for me. I've ran tons of sandbox campaigns. In fact, most of my D&D campaigns are sandbox, and I've yet to play any of those campaigns where a big plot didn't develop because of the player's actions, except for one, interestingly enough, and that was a hex crawl. I set up a traditional hex crawl. This was many years ago. I worked at a video store when I was like 19 or 20 years old, and we all gamed there. Everybody there knew each other. We were all friends, and we all would game one specific night. But there was one guy there I'd always get work nights with every single night, and we didn't close till midnight. Of course, we're 20 years old, so after we'd close, I'd be like, hey, let's go hang out. And eventually I was just like, hey, let's play D&D. So it was just me and him, solitary playing D&D. And I set up a traditional hex crawl. I wanted to do that. Now, and he wasn't interested in doing any plots. He just enjoyed exploring around the world. And he would go to this place and that place. I had a bunch of adventure seeds, and I had every hex laid out with some kind of seed in it, which is what a hex crawl is supposed to be. That's the idea of the hex crawl. We're talking about hex crawling. That's really where the idea comes from. It comes from Judges Guild, right? and those Wilderlands supplements, which I was going to grab some off my shelf, but I'm too lazy to walk over there. But they would have, if you haven't seen one before, they literally laid out every single hex, and that's where this idea came from. And a lot of the OSR community basically did it as an experiment, like they do a lot of things. Some people try to incorporate Brownstein games in their D&D games just to see how that plays out in the history or whatnot of playing D&D, and how that works out. So that's what an actual hex crawl is. It's not just exploring hexes. And yeah, it is just a sandbox game, but it's a very specific type of sandbox game where you're actually plotting little seeds for every hex specifically. And it's usually a small area. It's like a province or something. It's not a huge, typically it's not like a big world. You would take just a little area and then expand out from that. You might, just like the Wilderlands did, you would have, whatever they had, the city state of blah, blah, blah. And then you would have like
the invincible overlord.
Right, exactly.
Well, I'm not going to take him on. He's invincible.
Thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's where you get into like the mapping arguments. So I remember getting into this, like seen this debate play where it has to be this many miles per hex, so that way you can have 8 hexes in a larger hex, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Let's use random terrain generators. Why is there a desert right next to Frosty Mountains, please? But what are you going to do?
That's fantasy.
Okay.
Well,
So
the terrain generators are keyed to the type. So if you're in a predominant forest, there are subtypes in the forest.
Hey, Sean, shitting on my joke again. Sean, you and I. High five, buddy. High five.
Yeah, well, when you tell bad jokes, I got to shit on.
Oh.
The Canadians are good fight.
Len. There's going to be a Canadian fight here in a second. What the hell, man?
Wager 50
Come on, hockey shirt, you.
Bad puppet. Bad puppet.
Bad puppet. Roll up a newspaper, hit him on the nose. Okay, so I think we can all agree all of these things can be a part of your GM toolbox. Even railroading, if used in the right way and sparsely and in a proper context. Now let's talk about the players. We all know the adage, no plan survives 5 minutes contact, right?
Which is why you have no plan.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I'll be reading Fight Club later. So the point becomes this. What is the most, and this is just for fun, what is the most WTF moment your players have ever done where you, even if you had no plan, you were like, well, I never saw this coming, and I just, how the hell do I roll with this now?
Episode 2 of my actual play of Traveler, where one of my characters pooped their pants to get to a military checkpoint. Yes, go watch it. It caught me off guard, and it actually having to one, not expect that one and try to ad-lib everything that goes in between that. I believe they had to call the medic out to check him out to make sure he was okay, and that's how they kind of got to the checkpoint, because it was insane. And if you go and listen to that actual play, you can tell at the moment where I'm like, he's like, I pooped my pants to get through there. Okay, give me a negative. Wait, what? What are you
what's
doing?
the skill cost for developing that? I mean, is the
What skill do you roll to shit
I
yourself?
believe I told him he
Bruce
needed to
Powell
do an
syndrome.
endurance plus deception check.
I guzzle
on
a
that one.
potion of dysentery and
Seriously, that's just fucked
Oh, he just
up.
ate a few laxatives while he was in line.
He stopped at the
I
Taco
was
Bell right
completely-
before heading to the gate.
I was completely blindsided by that, and it was. They actually had somebody who was looking for him at that checkpoint too. So there was like three of the characters in the back of the truck hiding while this was all going on. And he did it right before they were gonna look in the back of the truck, and I was just like, the way they were rolling to kind of like, hey, no, don't look in the back of the truck. Completely failed. The guy was gonna look in the back of the truck and blindsided me there. So that was one of the most like, okay, this entire session is going a completely different direction than I thought it was going to. But got to do the dice rolls on the spot. Like I said, it was endurance plus deception. First time I ever had to do endurance and a deception roll together, and it was quite insane. And it's on my channel if you want to watch it. It's It really did happen, and I have proof of it.
I wouldn't deny that you really have. I don't know. It's fucked up. Anyone else? Anyone else got a WTF moment? Eli?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, another getting into the city scenario. So it was a 3-5 game, and it was a pretty big table. And so the rest of the party gets to the city, and there's a big line at the city gate. There are two lines. There's a line with wagons, and then there's a line for foot traffic. Little Sally gate and the main gate, right? And they get there, and they see that the guards are checking the wagons, and that they're checking weapons at the gates too. And it's been established in the campaign that most of the cities in this kingdom have sword tax. You basically either leave your weapons at the gate, or you pay a pretty hefty gold charge to carry them in the city. Plus, there's all these obligations while you're carrying them in the city. Anyways, the thief in the party decides that no, I'm not going to do this. There's no reason for him to be worried. They haven't done anything in the game to where he's got to worry. It's just routine checks. So the thief decides that he's going to wander down the wall. It's nighttime, so he thinks, I'm going to wander down the wall. I'm going to try and grapple myself, get the grappling hook up on the wall and climb over the city wall. And so I've already explained that there are guards on the walls. There are towers with ballistas. Your typical D&D castles, right? Where the ballistas on towers and stuff like that. But there are also, and he fails the grappling 3 times. Manages to injure himself by getting hit in the head with his grappling hook on a fumbled roll, and then decides that rather than go through the gate. I'm sitting there watching him. The rest of the party is just watching him as they're getting closer to the gate and waiting their turn in line to enter the city legally and legitimately. And he's over there trying to grapple. He's like, well, then I'm going to look to see if there's like a sewer grate or something, or a drain. I'm going to go try and enter through the sewer. So the dwarf thief that he is goes into the sewer and starts wandering around in the dark in the sewer. And it was just a big comedy of errors, because ultimately he ended up trying to light a torch and set off a patch of methane gas in the sewer. And meanwhile, the rest of the party's like in the inn, checked in, getting dinner. He's still trying to get into the city. I'm like, and again, like, why are you doing this? You don't have to. There's no reason. It's not like his thief's like, I can't go into the city legitimately. I killed 15 men here.
Yeah. No, just a player being a player. I get
Exactly.
it. That happens.
I've had a lot of what the fuck moments, but one
I'm
that
not
comes
surprised.
Yeah, I've had a lot. Actually, most of them caused by me as a player. But and I'll talk about one of those. But one of the ones that came to mind, and it's probably not the biggest one. We've had some really big ones, but one that I thought was kind of funny and is kind of relevant to the situation was I told everybody, hey, I'd like to just run a mega dungeon with original D&D. Do you guys want to do that? Everybody was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. It was just kind of an experiment. Let's play like D&D 1974 style, out of the white box. I'm just going to draw up a big mega dungeon. Let's do that for a little while. So we're playing through this mega dungeon, and I got a player that does not like to be told what to do. He's just one of those guys. And he played along for a little while. And then we got quite a few sessions in, and they're pretty deep in the levels. And I could I can tell when he's about to do something stupid, because he wants to go off path. He always does this. And I could see that look in his eyes. And they walk in this room and they find this giant demon idol. And it was just, by the way, I just wrote it in there for decoration. It wasn't supposed to actually do anything. It was just there to scare them, and they're like, oh, cool, whatever. So they see this demon idol, and the player's like, I'm going to try to summon the demon. I'm like, all right, how are you going to do that? And he's like, looking around, and he's like, is there any inscriptions on it? And I'm like, I'm totally going to play along with this. So I'm like, yep, there's inscriptions on it. And so he figures out how to read the inscription. He summons the demon, and the demon, destroys the whole freaking dungeon around him and comes out of the dungeon into the town. And now we're out of the dungeon crawl completely. And this game has turned into something else. Now it's a heroic epic adventure where they just awoken this demon that's taken over half of the world, and they have to take it back. So that's kind of a double adjective, because it kind of plays into what we're talking about. Where you can the game can just completely change on its head based on the players' decisions. Another little funny one was I was a player in a game in high school, and we were playing through this very lengthy campaign. And the rogue, we come to this jungle temple, and the rogue, we heard that it's full of traps and dangers and stuff. And the rogue checks it out, and in the first room, he dies. And we see him die in front of us. Like, all these traps just go off. You know, it's like darts and like blades and all kinds of shit. And he just dies. And we're like, oh shit. And I'm playing a barbarian, and this barbarian was dumb as hell. You know, he had like an intelligence of 6. And he's just like, yep, I go. And he just ran through it. And so the DM's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I just fucking run through that shit. And so he's like, all right, make this save. I made it. Make this save. I made it. Make this save. I made it. I mean, it was like 10 saves, and I made them all. And get to the very end, I'm like, no problem. Come on. And so from then on, like, it was anytime we'd go through, you know, a dungeon or whatever, I would just kick down the door or open the chest. If there was a trap, I would always seem to make that save. And eventually it just came to the point where the DM was like, if there's a trap, you make the save. Like, he just gave me this like magical ability.
That was the day that Cody on a stream admitted that he uses loaded dice.
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check out, guys. But it's been fun.
Peace.
Good night, Eli. Take care.
Okay.
I don't play often, but I used to play more when I was younger to a certain extent, and we were playing Torg. Any of you guys ever play Torg? Anybody know Torg from West End Games?
We know it.
So it was like the other riffs at the same time, and in Torg, all the realities are overlaying on top of each other. So when you go from one to the other, you adjust to their reality, and all this kind of weird stuff happens, and you can wind up having what are called reality storms and all this kind of stuff. And our characters, I can't remember what we were doing. We were doing something important, and we wound up in a realm called the Cyber Papacy, which is this weird cyber Catholic church realm. And for whatever reason, we got dragged in front of the cyber pope. And I was playing a version of Lady America from the pulp Nile Empire setting. So like an all-American 1930s superhero. And the cyber pope's interrogating us. And for some reason, I just started doing a James Kirk holding the American flag speech at the cyber pope about freedom and the rights of mankind and how no god should be deciding things for men. And I just went off on this massive rant. And then the storyteller, Matt, is like, okay. And then I finish and I look Matt dead in the eye and I go, and I reality storm him. And Matt's like, okay, we'll make the roll. And I make the roll and I get the equivalent of a really shit hot roll, like whatever closest to a critical can be. So he rolls the resistance of the cyber pope and fumbles. So effectively, he's stuck going, well, the rules are clear on this one. You convert the cyber pope to your reality at this moment in time. So suddenly he has to become a Nile Empire person, and then all the stuff that I have that benefits me in the Nile Empire are going to apply to him, and I get canonized, and everything's fantastic. And I was told to make a new character next session. Oops.
Yeah. See, I've actually got 2. The first one is kind of one of those one-offs, like the players are walking through the forest, and just as flavor text, I say you see an orc arrow stuck in a tree. The players decide to spend the next 20 minutes in real time analyzing this orc arrow that's been in this tree. I mean, to the point that I told them the tree has grown around the head of the orc arrow. It's been here for at least 20, 30 years. But they're all like, okay, is there any other look of orcs or anything else? I mean, they're full paranoia at this point, just from a flavor text thing. And for like the next 2 or 3 sessions, they're still asking me, are there anything that looks like there is any orcs around? And finally I threw an orc at them, just a single orc. And then they were like, oh, you've eliminated the orc horde that was plaguing the land. And he was like, if you want to think of it in this terms, he was a World of Warcraft, worker orc. He's just a blacksmith just in a town.
Making horseshoes.
Making horseshoes. Dead. Farrier dead. The other one that was pretty awesome is as a player's side.
I've got this visual in my head now. Quiet medieval village. You hear the tink tink, the tink tink. You pan the camera over, and there's this orc working away. Someone walks by. Morning, Thagog. Morning, tink 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 tink. And then just suddenly from off screen, 5 players. And they fucking just murder him at his anvil.
Pretty much. That's pretty much how it went.
Fucking.
The other one, which was one of those truly epic things, is I was a player at the table. We were playing Exalted. And we had a new player who was playing a Twilight, which Twilights typically, they come in one of 2 varieties. They're either thief-wise or they're more of the scholar throw spell-wise. They can go either way. She decided she was going to be more of the thief-wise. So as we're coming up to the town, we're coming in. He decides that she wants to try to steal the guard's pants right off of him. He does it. He rolls like it's essentially a critical, and then it explodes the dice about 3 times by rolling 10s. And the pants are gone. And then we just walk into town because she did this while we were all getting the speech in the town, keep your weapon sheathed, blah blah blah, all this the normal rigmarole you get when you're walking into a town. And then all of a sudden we're about about 30-40 feet away from him, and he goes, "Where are my pants?" And then who took my pants? And then the character she was playing was Bill, and the GM through his world is ever growing, and he uses it from campaign to campaign. Well, he has these things that were originally from Magic the Gathering called Squee. They're like little goblinoid little things. He had one as attached to her as a companion. And the Squee looks up at him and goes, "Not Bill." And then at that point, that was when the legend of Not Bill was born. This poor guy got transported 4 or 5 times, transferred 4 or 5 times to 4 or 5 different towns. And we wound up going to each and every one of those towns. And he was stationed at the gate. Every time he lost his pants. It just became a thing. We saw this guy and his pants went away. And he could not figure out for the life of him how it happened or anything else. The Squee in that campaign were basically the reason that they actually came about is because the DM forgot to give them the MacGuffin. And he needed a quick way to get them the MacGuffin. So he just, he was tired. And he says, "Oh, well, these little goblinoids, come up." And he actually does let the players do a lot of different things. And it's actually one of my favorite settings to run is actually his setting. Just because there tends to be a lot of over-the-top stuff that happens. For instance, if you look at the Squee and you say banana, you got to figure they kind of short, minion-esque size, and then they become like the purple minions and tear things apart. They're essentially third circle demons.
I don't know if my face is conveying enough at this moment in time, so I'm going to use words. What the fuck?
Exactly.
I'm good.
You asked. Remember this. You asked.
I asked for a what the fuck moment, and then you described a what the fuck campaign.
On your first one, there's a good principle that would help with GM styles for anybody starting. It's called Chekhov's gun for writing plays. Never have a gun on there and on stage unless it's going to go off in 2 scenes. But I'm guilty of that too, and wind up having weird stuff like I wouldn't go into how crazy my campaign is, but yeah, making computer viruses from uplifted dolphins and Traveler, it's can be kind of crazy. They call it only
Mega Traveler to happen by releasing the ultimate virus.
And you say that
in my head canon, the only Fins virus is actually the virus of the future of Mega Traveler.
There you go. I think the D&D version of Chekhov's gun is never give a villain or an opponent a magic item you don't want your players to have, because they will kill him and they will take it, and now you have to deal with them having it.
It's all good.
Just give it
It's
a
easy.
I randomly
talk-
determined that my characters were getting a +5 sword, and it just randomly came up. I'm not going to fudge it. All right, so they got a +5 sword. But what I did do was give it a backstory that it bore a curse. The sword was called Triumph, but the curse was that it invited challenge. So inevitably the wielder would be challenged. And the last several owners had died due to a challenge. That was all just fluff. There was no actual curse, but were they paranoid. They kept that thing hidden away unless they absolutely needed it.
or the sentient sword that didn't like to get blood on it and would not allow itself to be pulled because no, I don't want to get icky.
One of my favorite
check
evil
the level
things
of
is
Gonzo you
an
guys are
item
describing
that
that I
only
would
works
do.
if you talk in rhyme.
I'm sorry, say that again, please, all once.
So one of my favorite evil things to do for a magic item that I don't want used is for it to work, they have to talk in rhyme. Yeah. Then it goes in the dumpster right away.
They have to do that all the time,
Yeah, to get it to work, you have to rhyme.
but they have to do that all the time.
While using it.
That's
I know it's evil.
weird. I just don't put.
I want to say
in
thank you
game.
for letting me on here. I just kind of hijacked my way in, so thanks for putting up with me. But I've got to go, and thanks for having me here.
Oh, dude, man, take care. It was a pleasure having you on. It was nice to actually talk to you once, as opposed to just react to your comments in a chat. So
I think I'm better in the comments. I'm not too good live. So.
Oh, stop your nonsense! You're fine. Please.
All right, I need to figure out how to hang up here, but you guys have a good night.
We'll chat with you
I might
tomorrow.
comment in the post.
Take it
How
easy,
awkward would it be if instead of hanging up, you pressed the camera button and we saw something we really shouldn't see?
Yeah, that would be yeah. So speaking of magic items in a game, there's this one game I was running. Well, I am currently running it where this one guy has this magic bow. Oh, hi, Len. And it's a bow with history, buddy. Uh-oh. You're in trouble.
You know, speaking of that bow was a neat item, but I also thought it was something that you'd be able to leverage off of, and we never had that discussion. I just left it there, and you're like, I'm good, and I'm like, I thought you might be, but we never actually said those words. And kind of on a tangent, in the conversation about GM styles and players interacting with them, I don't know if you guys covered this. There is a conversation going on between the DM and the players, and it's never a conversation in words. But in every game, there's a conversation going on between the player and the game master. When the game master drops plot hooks here, there, or whatever, or when the players create characters of a certain kind, and when there's a whole lot of communication going on between the players and the game masters that is implied. And I think that is sort of an underpinning of all these different GM styles, of how much freedom you have or whatever. And I don't want to go too far. That may be a whole different podcast, but you know, it strikes me as Sean would be fine to drop 17 different plot hooks and have the players say, no, I just want to buy a farm and farm. But I think most people would be like, really, yo? You just want to buy a farm, and that's what you want to do for 13 sessions? Just want to corner the chicken market? I mean, which one of us did when we were 13. But anyway, because chickens, I think, in advanced are very, very, very cheap. And my friend's just like, how much are chickens? I'll buy them all. I'm going to corner the chicken market, and I'll sell them all at triple the price or whatever. He has a good bit of money now. But anyway,
we
I will
discussed
make chicken nuggets.
we
In real
discussed
life,
the,
he
the,
has-
the
he has-
fishing the fishing
was a-
and PC option earlier.
But in any event, there's something to be said for this. There is a communication sort of underlying the GM player interactions with GM styles. I don't know if you guys covered it, but I think that's probably an important part of the whole dynamic.
Len,
I think
just get it off your chest. We'll talk about it. We can talk about it. Go.
Dirty History and Hobbies kind of popped it into my head with one of their posts earlier on. So anyway, that's all.
Go ahead. We're open to the conversation.
Well, no, the conversation. Literally, it's just that. It's there's there's certain expectations that I don't know if it's railroading. We played a Star Trek game. It was a one shot, and one friend of ours who's a very good guy, but has a tendency, especially when he was younger, to do the whole "I'm going to go off on my own" thing. And during the Star Trek game, he was like an engineer, and I don't know, there were Klingons or something, and whatever. And of his own accord, he beamed himself aboard like the enemy Klingon ship to go and do stuff. And we were all just like, really, you're the engineer, you're just gonna just beam your, and sure, you can do anything you want, but I think in that moment, that particular thing kind of, there's an understanding that we're all Star Trek officers and we're all relatively sane, and we're all that sort of wild action likely wouldn't happen. And I think it was a violation of that communication that goes on. Now, is that saying that he couldn't do it? Is that railroading? Or
No.
is that just the player choosing to ignore that unspoken communication about the game? What we all mean when we're saying we're playing Star Trek and you're an engineer and I'm the captain and I'm the first officer and so on.
Well, okay. So first of all, I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no. But all right, you're going to the transporter room. Well, the transporter chief's there. So you're going to try and set up all this stuff. And the transporter chief's standing there going, sir, what are you doing? I'm beaming over. Sir,
let's assume he may have been the transporter chief. I mean, let's assume
then
that
I would have just had the Klingons kill the shit out of him when he arrived.
Right?
Like I would have had like 8 Klingons around go and just start bat-whipping him into fucking mincemeat.
With the one guy like jumping with his elbow.
Yeah, with the spike elbow, no less. Just like, you know. Oh yeah, pata. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Honor. Oh no, here comes Crotcho Cran off the top rope. Oh no. You know, like, listen, there are always going to be players like that, clearly, right? They're just agents of chaos. Now, I have a player that I play with often, Pat. He's been on here before. Pat's been on a couple of the shows. And Pat is the walking, talking, living agent of chaos.
Sorry to interrupt real quickly. There's a comment in the thing, Josh Hode. I really tried to kill him. He rolled well. Josh was DMing that game. Josh was the guy running that game. Yeah. Josh is a friend of mine.
Josh, Klingon transporters, Josh. Wide pattern dispersal into space. No roll. No roll. Anyway, Pat is an agent of chaos. And when I first started playing with Pat, he was the derail captain. You know what I mean? Like, well, let's see what bullshit Pat's going to do tonight, because whatever we had planned is going to get sidetracked by Pat. But then I learned, as the GM with Pat, give him little hooks and shit that seems off of the main story that's going to catch his attention, and he's going to go after, like bait, like I'm fishing for him. You know what I mean? And as a result of that, I could use Pat's chaos to further the story and further the adventure, because he could then get dragged into situations that would cause the other players to have to get involved, and then there'd be all this fun and ironically, his last character, every time he rolled into shoot into combat, he got a 1 and hit my friend Anthony's barbarian, to the point that in the game, there's now the joke of whenever a fight starts, Anthony's like, okay, my first action is movement. I move behind the goblin, because he doesn't want to be in front of him at any point in time anymore. And that's fine. You know what I mean? That's the way a game should go. Chaos should contribute to the fun. But that guy, no offense, was just being a dick. and that is a violation, I think, of the contract to a certain extent, if not the letter, at least the spirit.
And to be very clear, he's this incredibly sweet guy who would give you the shirt off his back. I cannot stress this enough. So, but within the context there, yeah, I think it was exactly say sort of violative of that implied contract, of that unspoken communication, which I do think applies in a larger sense, whether you're playing a more railroady game or a completely open sandbox. There's still, like Sean may not care, but if I was in Sean the game and I saw 3 or 4 or 5 hooks for the Mines of Moria, I'm like, you know what? Let's fucking go check out the Mines of Moria.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, but that's the way I like to play. I like the players to see the options and say, "Hey, let's check this out." And they're not all level coded. Some things could be over your head. You have to make that determination.
That's why I don't color code dragons in my world. You find out. You find out whether that dragon's good or bad. You find out what kind of breath weapons come out of that fucker. Because I remember way, 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 way back when we first started playing D&D, and we ran into a white dragon, and one of the players playing an elf, we had no idea. We were just starting this new game, and he's like, "Well, it's white, so it must be good." Well, we found out the hard way. White does not mean good when it comes to dragons. It wasn't a white hat situation. We also later found out that the opposite was not true when we learned that black dragons were bad too. And then, we read the fucking book. And then we were like, okay, just stay away from dragons. They suck. They're the worst thing. Well, we're in the last stretch here, so I think we're open forum at this point in time. We can discuss anything we want to discuss. If anybody in the chat wants to say something, go right ahead. If it's good, we'll talk about it and we'll share it. But anybody got anything they want to talk about? Any subject matter that's,
Well, I've got my very brief what the fuck story that
goody.
derailed the game back when I was still running Rifts. I was about 22, and played in the way where I planned out the story. I wrote the whole thing in advance and expected the players to follow it. I learned when my players had decided, instead of going into the interior from Laszlo, I don't know if you know the Rifts lore, Laszlo is Toronto. They were going to, I had this whole plot where they had to go into the interior. They had to go to Detroit, Ann Arbor area. And one of them said, "Hey, we all have flying vehicles. Let's fly to England and see what happens." And it's like, okay, let's make this happen.
I would have introduced him to the business end of a coalition air battalion at that point in time. Just been
I went with it. That was the learning experience. That was
over the Atlantic.
Well, they had a lot of fun with it. That was a learning experience for me. It's like, okay, I got to be flexible. And I also had the Rifts England book I wanted to use, so there was an excuse. Okay. So they flew out, to the coast, made the hop to Iceland and the hop to Scotland, and off they went.
Isn't Rifts England like Arthurian or something?
Not
Probably.
Quite. No. You're thinking Mutants in Avalon.
So that's not Rifts, the Avalon?
Maybe.
No, Mutants in Avalon is from the TMNT after the bomb line.
Oh, okay. So what is Rifts England like?
All druids and nature shit. You could get a big leaf that's an MDC suit of armor. It's really stupid.
So it's stupid. Yeah, okay. Much like Rifts Quebec. Stupid. Got it. Sorry, free Quebec.
Free Quebec. But I passed on my lesson to another friend who was DMing Rifts when he made this whole campaign based around one of the other players who had made a dragon. And then he said, "Okay, everybody make your characters." And I made a coalition grunt. And when the dragon lipped me off, I just got annoyed, unloaded the whole clip into him, and killed him outright in the first session. The DM was just blanking. He's like, "Oh, okay, what do I do now?"
Well, yeah. Buddy of mine decided to run for his first game ever an evil D&D campaign. So we showed up to play, and we made evil characters. And one of the characters decided that, as my character, it was a necromancer, was cutting open the monster we just killed, looking for the venom sac, to shoot me in the back of the head with an arrow because he was chaotic evil, and killed my character. And I just sort of looked at him, and I looked at Renzo, the D&D and DM, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm going home. Bye. And I packed up my shit and said, "Enjoy the game, guys, but my character's dead. I guess I'm going home." walked out, and as I was walking up the street, another friend of mine lived in an apartment nearby. So I said, fuck it, I'll stop in, see what's going on, see what he's doing. I knock on the door, and he's like, hey, me and Farrell are hanging out. We're just looking for something to do. I said, cool. Mind if I hang out? He's like, yeah. We were thinking about role-playing. Would you want to role-play? I went, yeah. What do you want to do? And they're like, well, we could play superheroes. I got the Marvel game. And I'm like, sure. And that was the start of my entire fucking Zenith universe that night.
Nice.
The Zenith universe started from me getting killed in an evil campaign 2 blocks over and walking away. And then like my entire fucking life has been that ever since. Weird shit, man. Just weird ass shit. Yeah, evil campaigns suck.
Most players don't understand what it means to be evil. They think it's all like ridiculous.
Yeah.
There are evil people in the real world who go to work and have kids and whatever, and because it just adult evil
doesn't have to be
way
homicidal.
scarier. Sorry?
Yeah, evil doesn't have to be homicidal. That's what people always
say. Not even remotely.
See the word evil and they assume worst of the worst. At all times.
Dumbest of the chaotic evil is as dumb as lawful good, is played as dumb as lawful good.
Played as, yeah. I was
and say no, neither of them.
Sorry, Baron Rock, you were going to say something?
The one thing is, if you want to teach people how to truly play an evil campaign, there is a entire thing for what is it? Savage World called Necessary Evil.
Necessary Evil, yeah.
That is the best way to teach people. But I have to share my personal what the fuck moment that I actually did in a game. So I'm playing a Skaven type character, a ranger. Let me go into this little town and into one of the huts, and the DM, I roll and everything else. It's all beautiful to see what I see. And he goes, well, you see rat tracks. And I go, well, wait. Like me rat or rat. And he goes, Norwegian. I go, okay. I turn to the rest of the table and I go, okay, you see these here? And they go, yeah. I go, those are squeak. It killed the entire table for about 20 minutes with them laughing because I did the full-on Norwegian squeak. And that is still talked about to this day.
Well, Muppets are evil.
They are. It's true. Ask a man who has his hand up a puppet's ass too often. Cody, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to give an example of probably the best and worst evil game I ever played. So we had this little local game store that we used to hang out at, and the guy it was a really great place, but he wasn't a great businessman. So the store was going out of business. So we decided to save the store. So we held a mini convention at his store for 2 days. We stayed there all night. He let us stay there. We all brought like sleeping bags and blow up air mattresses. And of course, we're all like, 18, 19, 20 years old and younger. So we didn't really sleep at all. And it was pretty cool. We had representatives from Kinzer & Co. and other game companies actually show up. So it was like a real proper little convention. And the main event was Saturday night. We did a Marvel Superheroes game, and Jay, the game store owner, ran it. He goes, yeah, I'll run a Marvel Superheroes campaign. It was like 20 players. He's like, oh, I got this great idea. So, 10, one half will be the good guys, one half will be the evil guys. You'll make your characters ahead of time, and it'll be kind of like a LARP almost situation, but we'll be playing Marvel Superheroes, and you guys will be reacting to each other, and it'll be this all night thing. And we were all like, cool. So I played the villains along with some others, and we roll up our characters randomly, like you should in Marvel Superheroes, And so we roll up these characters, and then we all start talking, and we're all sitting there talking as the bad guys, developing our plots. And we were like, you know what? Fuck this. So one of us was able to become mayor. One of us bought a pharmaceutical company. One of us, so basically what happened is we were like, you know what? We're just going to completely defeat these guys without doing anything overtly evil. So I made a guy that he could control minds and stuff, but he actually owned a pharmaceutical company and made mind altering drugs. and had them approved through the FDA. I made all these rolls and like all this stuff. And then like one guy was the mayor. And then we get to the action and the superheroes are like, all right, we're like patrolling the city and stuff. And then they actually come looking for us, because they think we're the bad guys. And, the police show up to arrest them because, we're the heads of these big corporations in the city and stuff. And everybody loves us. And then like the whole town riots when the superheroes come and they become the villains. And so that whole campaign really, after all the, plotting and everything, the actual play of the campaign only lasted about an hour. And we just broke the game master. He was just like, I fucking hate you guys.
It's because he had a vested interest in the outcome. I tell you.
Yeah, Sean's
Play to
chaos
see
theory is
what
the best
happens.
way to go. Have
we
no
pool our
expectations.
resources and buy Nestle Company. All right, we got child labor, we got slavery. We're good.
We're good.
We
We're
win.
good. We're good. So my players, one time we were taking a break from playing heroes in Marvel, and they wanted to play the villains. And I said, okay, we're going to do this, but you guys understand, I'm not going to play the villains stupid. They're going to be played smart, because that's what comic books are about. The villains ultimately always lose. I'm going to play them smart. I won't cheat, but I'm going to play. Yeah. We're good. Okay, make your characters. They make their characters. All right, so you've just pulled off a big heist. Great. What'd we get? Oh, you got $10 million from the bank. Awesome. We're there. We're really happy about it. This is great. Awesome. Cool. And they're in their safe house hanging out, trying to figure out how to divvy up the money. And of course, they start arguing with each other. So what I used to do is I used to have them do an intuition table where everybody would roll 10 intuition checks on a chart, give it to me, and the chart had percentiles. And then whenever I wanted to do intuition, I'd roll a percentile and just cross their numbers to see how they did. And it comes up on one where they've all got a botch or a fail. They don't succeed on their intuition. So they don't notice the heroes have now showed up and are starting to, and it's not the Fantastic Four. It's my universe's Batman at this point in time, who showed up with his little bat family. And it just degenerates into chaos once the fight starts and everything. They're like freaking out. They can't do shit. One guy, my buddy John's playing a character called Land Shark, and he gets grabbed by like the Robin equivalent. And he just uses his burrowing power to start dragging this kid through the earth to get rid of him. But on his exit, he makes a 00 on his perception and goes straight into a boulder. Boom, knocks himself cold. Fine. As everything's going to shit, my buddy Renzo's playing this guy called the Sponge, and he's just this big fat guy with kinetic absorption, and he's watching everything go to shit, and he just snaps and goes, fuck it. I just start sticking as much money as I can into the folds of my fat, and I'm just walking out the fucking door. To which the fat guy takes his Batarang equivalent that has a taser and just goes, book. Takes him the fuck out. It ends, and I'm like, so you guys ever want to do that again? They're like, fuck no, that sucked. It's like, well, now you know how the NPCs feel when you're heroes, because you do the same shit to them all the time, Like, fuck, it was fun. We still mention it now. 25 years ago we did that, fuck.
That makes me think, has anyone heard of the RPG called Better Angels?
No.
So it's an RPG where the idea behind it is that you are all supervillains.
Mm-hmm.
But in this world, you're supervillains because you get powers from being possessed by an evil entity. And there's an evil entity that, like I think all, and I may be wrong about this, so give me a little wiggle room. So it may not be 100%, but I think basically all the characters are like people who died. But this evil entity says, hey, I can bring you back to life. And you're like, yeah, sure. And when you come back to life and you have powers now, but this evil entity is evil. And so the point, but it doesn't really understand the way the world works. And so it's keeping you alive, and you have to be a supervillain. But you are almost invariably good people to start with. And so your job is basically to perform dumb super crimes, like to try to do villainous stuff, but to do villainous stuff in the least successful way, because you're trying to, the sort of the conceit is this: you come to the realization there's this demon. If you say like no, it might actually land in someone else who's more than willing to do what it wants them to do, and create chaos and mayhem and really harm people. So you are actually a hero because you've decided that you're going to deal with this thing in you. And sort of be a supervillain. And so the conceit is all these ridiculous supervillain plans, like I'm going to steal the moon or whatever, is you basically it's trying to make this demon that's possessing you, giving you powers, think that you're doing it, but you're trying to keep the damage to a minimum, which is why you can fight lots of heroes, but you're not going to kill them when you have the opportunity. And like there's game mechanics for like a variety of different, the tension between you and fighting the heroes. And also I think like one of the other players at the table plays the demon that's possessing you. And so it's like, kill him. Like, no, we can't kill him right now because it would be worse for us in the future, whatever. And so I don't know how popular the game ever was. I never owned it, but I heard about it. But the conceit I thought was just brilliant as an excuse for.
It'd make a good comic, actually, with a good writer.
Yeah. Chairface Chippendale.
Yeah, no, that's like, I'm going to steal the moon. My brain went there too. I'm like, Chairface Chippendale. Oh, awesome.
Yep. Anyway, it's a clever idea.
Well, listen, gentlemen, we are at the end of the road. It's 10 p.m. and I got to work in the morning and all that good stuff that we always have to do to pay the bills and keep the fucking lights on. I had everybody put their channels in the private chat here, so I'm just going to give you guys a bunch of channels. So this is Mage's Musings. Please go subscribe to him. And this is GM Cody. Please go subscribe to him. Hang on just a second. I got more coming. All Ones gave us his channel. Go subscribe to him, which I have to do as well. So that's All Ones. What else we got? We got Elfbait's channel. Hang on. We're going to go to that. You're going to go over to Lens Store and you're going to buy yourself a copy of what's that silly game that everyone talks about all the time and mentions all the time?
Star by this hacks I hack there and hack again. Prowlers and Paragon.
There's that Black Star thing. That's the one. Or Dark Star or Off-White Star or Dirty Coal-Covered Star or whatever it is.
Black
Go buy
Star,
that.
baby.
But those are their channels, guys. Please go subscribe to them and check them out. And for the ones who aren't at 1,000 yet, let's get them to 1,000 so they can be part of this exciting world. Sadly, we had no super chats tonight, so there'll be no giveaway of Drive-Thru RPG gift cards. C'est la vie. We'll try again next week, where it looks like we're going to be talking about styles of player. And that should be an interesting conversation with lots of arguing and ringing and gnashing of teeth, as they say. Anything you got to say before we log off here, Cody?
I got nothing.
I got nothing. Like that.
This was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was fun.
And I think we all really came at came pretty much to the same. We all were kind of one brain tonight. We didn't disagree very much, which was.
I disagree.
Okay.
I don't agree.
No, I can't divide what little brain I have by 5 ways. I guess I don't have enough. Enough juice.
Anything you got to say before we go, Sean?
No, really. I think we covered the basics.
Baron G-Rock.
Play the game you want to play. That's what I have to say. Play, then don't shit on other people for the way they play.
And have no expectations of your players, and that way your campaign will always be a surprise. Baron G-Rock, any parting words for us?
Oh, I'm gonna hawk my stuff. So yeah. Tomorrow night on Table Breakers at 7:30 Central Standard Time, we are going to be talking about necromancy and how to use it in a good campaign. So make sure you do join us for that. And yeah.
Sounds groovy. All right, Len, anything you got to add to the finale here?
No, it was fun to be on. Nice to see you guys.
Go buy Len's shit. That's all I'll say. You want good D&D games? Buy this Axe I Hack. D&D done Lord of the Rings style, they're in Hack again. You like superheroes? Prowlers and Paragons Ultimate Edition. Totally worth checking out. And if you like Star Wars without the serial numbers, Black Star.
Black Star is up to 15 5-star reviews. I'm very flattered.
Well, it's your hit,
and like people who took the time to write stuff.
It's your breakout game, buddy. Thanks, you did good. And as we've always said around here, Zeg Media is a wholly owned subsidiary of Lakeside Games. Some people think that's serious, by the way. Some people honestly have thought that's real. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's a joke. But I am a Bear, the Gen X GM. As always, I'm going to say peace, love, geek. And I'll be doing a coffee with Bear in the morning for those who want to show up bright and early and watch me prepare for my shitty day at work. Otherwise, we'll see you when we see you. All right, guys, police squad, take your pose.